to about $1 trillion by 2040. Unfortunately, we don't hear any industries or private sectors or governments in Africa contributing in this sector. So the first aspect of our discussion, we're going to look at why this missing gap in terms of Africa contributing to this business sector. Then secondly, going to look at the laws and policies related to space business in Africa. So first, we call upon our panel, Dr. Timothy, to first discuss with us how Africa can contribute to this sector of space business.
Sean, thank you very much. And firstly, I would like to talk a little bit about the RASCOM. That's the Regional Africa Satellite Communications Organization. It's an organization that was set up under the African Union to champion satellite connectivity, satellite communication connectivity in Africa, and is currently made up of 45 African countries and 2 other institutions. That's the BOED and also ASECNA. It is an honor for me to address this part of the segment with you, and also to be here as well in at the All Nations University, which also doubles as my alma mater as well. And so let me take it for the first question. That is for the business angle. All right. Now, currently, RASCOM in general has 1 satellite, and this is a combination of public-private partnership, okay, between the Africa countries, a contribution from them, and also from Thales Alenia Space, that's a satellite manufacturer, and also an investment institution in Libya. Now, we have 1 satellite in space, and it will deorbit in first quarter of 2030. Now, this satellite is serving both for fixed satellite services and also for broadcasting satellite services within the African region. It is very difficult sometimes marketing single satellites, because everybody asks, so what is the backup? What if you develop a fault? How do we develop a backup? So one of the things that we are developing currently is to collaborate with other African institutions or countries that have their own satellite in space, for us to create an African constellation. That is to have them as backups to each other in case maybe we have customers that are raising issues relating to what is about your satellite backup. Now, to do that, we have been signing some MOUs with the African countries. For example, just last 2 months, we signed an MOU with the Angola Space Agency, or GJPN, which is to enable us to collaborate well with each other and use each other's services as and when it is required. Now, from the Regional Africa Satellite Communications Organization, that means I also have the liberty to also not market only the satellite of RASCOM, but also to find liberty in marketing the satellite of the other African satellite operators. Like we have Nigeria, NICOMSAT satellite. We also have the Egypt satellite, and we have other satellite communications as well within the African continent that we want to take advantage on to ensure that market-wise, we develop a very effective marketing plan to aid the commercialization of these satellite services within the country, within the continent. And this is very important, because if Africa wants to develop, I think it is high time we try to look at what we have and how effectively we have to use what we have in order for us to look at what we don't have and how to look out for the solutions to care what we do not have. So in the business wise, yes, we are signing some MOUs with the African satellite operators We are also building some PPPs as well to look at how we'll be able to develop some projects to be together within the sub-region. And if we have to develop Africa, it is us who have to show the interest of spearheading the development before, if we're looking at other partners to come and compensate what we don't have, we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second panel on this topic, let's call Dr. Timidayo. Dr. Timidayo, he is joining us online. Dr. Timidayo, are you there? He is the Managing Director of Space in Africa. So we're looking at space as a business. Dr. Timidayo?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to join you today for this session. Mr. Ashon, good to see you again. Yes, talking about space business in Africa, I think I can provide a little bit of a view based on the report and some of the work that we do at Space in Africa. So while the global space industry is currently valued at about half a trillion dollars, the African space market contributes a small portion of these, which sits around 19 to 20 billion dollars in annual revenue. And so, this is like a very good way to get an overview or get a sense of what the business opportunities look like in the African space and satellite industry value chain. So we've got global navigation satellite systems that contribute about 45% of this near $20 billion in revenue. We've got satellite TV services. We've got fixed satellite and mobile satellite services, which is the market that RASCOM, for example, play in, which contributes close to $1 billion in annual revenue in the African market. And then we've got the Earth observation and geospatial market, which is also growing, generating around $200 million in annual revenue. And lastly, we've got the growing manufacturing segment of the market, which really comprises of companies that are now building critical technologies, for satellite and other space systems. And, we're in the last decade or two, we're actually seeing, more companies also being established, in the African market, focusing on like the different industry segment. A lot of the, currently we've got a little over 400 companies in the entire industry value chain. Majority are downstream companies, and a few upstream companies. In addition to what the landscape look like in terms of the market segment, we're also seeing an increase in how much, an increase in investors' appetite, on the continent. In the last couple of years, new space companies in Africa have raised $400 million in investment. And, this shows that investors, both local investors in Africa and even foreign investors from Europe and America are very bullish about what is going on in the industry and the opportunity that it presents. So I'm going to stop here to allow for other speakers to give an introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We go to Dr. Fadahunsi Banjo to hear his view on this state of business, space business in Africa. So, Banjo.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me, please?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to, to speak once again at the space in Ghana. I must say that this is actually a very great platform to sensitize the African, spacescape regarding what is happening and how we can actually just even still move forward. So regarding the business in Africa, I would like to say that more often than not, whenever we have the opportunity to speak regarding space activities generally in Africa, we always try to find ourselves or say that in a way we are a bit disadvantaged. But it has actually gotten to a point where Africa needs to the African spacescape, we need to come together to find a way to contribute to what is going on globally when it comes to space business. So as a lawyer, from my own perspective, I would want to address space business from, the legal perspective. Considering the fact that there are existing legislations in regulating the outer space domain, it is really imperative to realize that before we could actually, key into what is going on in the business of space, we must ensure that we have regulations which would encourage prospective investors, to come to Africa. And at the same time, we also must ensure that we have to put some structures in place. So as it stands in Nigeria, space business in Nigeria, started, since 2000. And as I speak, we currently have the NIGECOMSAT Limited, which was created to market the data and the business aspects of Nigeria communication satellites, when it was launched. And so far, this has actually been carried on, and we've done it in collaboration with several countries. More importantly, I can also say that the agency is currently collaborating with private entities in the outer space domain to ensure that we're able to leverage on whatever is available to space business from the private sector perspective. So just as it has been said, according to the World Economic Forum, it has been established that in the not too distant future, particularly by the year 2035, space economy generally would be worth about $1.8 trillion. So as it stands, the African continent may not be currently contributing so much as it stands. However, programs like this are avenues for countries to come together to really see what we can do on what we have that we could, leverage on in order to, have a share of what is revenues to be generated in the global scale and global space business. As we all know currently, most of existing space science and technologies are usually, have their foundation on space science and technology from, smart gadgets, smart watches, from the from space weather forecasts, and from even as much as businesses which are dependent on space science and technology. For instance, you have the deliverables, which are basically the industries such as the retail, the consumer goods, the food business and all that, who one way or another depend on space data to manage their activities. So as it stands, space business in Africa, even though right now it's not really at the peak, but it's gradually building up, considering the fact that we are beginning to see series of collaborations between space agencies and private entities, both within Africa and outside Africa. This does not mean that there are no challenges which are in a way inhibiting the effective participation in space business globally. But as it stands, as much as we can, we're putting forward whatever little abilities that we have in order to ensure that we also participate in space business globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Dr. Azai Ali. Dr. Azai Ali, if you can hear me. What do you think should be some of the things African businesses should consider in terms of space business?
Well, thank you for that. And thank you to Dr. Nelson for inviting me here today. I want to just start off first by echoing the illustrious speakers who've gone before me in this discussion. The opportunity of space is very clear, but how to take advantage of it can be challenging and daunting at times for even companies in the developed economies. And so those in the developing economies have at times an even greater challenge. There are fundamental sectors of the space economy which can be accessed very immediately. And so I'm going to talk about two of them today. There are more, but I'm going to discuss specifically what I think are the two top opportunities. And I want to talk first about data. And what is it about data that is so interesting? Our usage of space data, Earth observation in different spectra, whether imaging or spectral or chemical sensing, is in its infancy. There is a tremendous amount of data being generated, most of it unused, and there's even more data that's going to be generated. And so when you think about that $500 billion economy, and actually a report just came out last week that the space economy has passed the $500 billion mark. So that's of course encouraging. It's trending correctly. So how do you get a piece of that pie? How do you get a piece of the 1.5 trillion by 2030 and the possibly 4 trillion by 2040? Right now, today, there is a tremendous demand and need for insight, not the data itself. Businesses, enterprises, governments want to know things, and this data can provide it, but not in the raw form. And rather than having to build up data science teams for themselves, etc. What these organizations would like to do, prefer to do, is buy it, preferably as a service. So in my opinion, the number one opportunity, and in many ways the lowest entry cost opportunity to get into the space economy, is to create companies and products based on data that comes from space. And specifically, not just to answer a simple question, but to answer a complicated question. That's where the money is. Anybody can count boats in a picture. However, if you can provide analysis with time domain imaging, multispectral imaging, signals intelligence, combined, what we call data fusion, and then provide a predictive model for what illegal fishing looks like off the coast of Japan, for example, which is one use case that a company I know is actually delivering. Then you have a product and possibly a service that can be a sustained business. And in my opinion, the beauty of this is really all you need to do is set up a cloud system. You don't need the compute on the ground where you are. You build your system cloud native, and all you need is a laptop and the right talent. So I would strongly urge folks listening, if you're thinking about where to enter the space economy, data analysis and insight as a service are two tremendous areas that are really, really wide open. And what's beautiful about this is that there's an advantage. There's a distinct comparative advantage for the developing world. And that advantage is at least twofold, if not multiple fold. One, the developed world has a poor understanding of what the outcomes that are truly needed in the developing world. And so the developing world can sell into its own markets with these products and services. Secondly, the developing world has innovated at a faster pace than the developed world now for the last 20 years. Now, that can be a bit of a shocking statement to some people because everybody talks about Silicon Valley, everybody talks about what's going on in Tel Aviv and China and India and all these other places. But very simply, those innovations are often either at a fundamental level or at an extremely high level. But the level of impacting everyday people's lives, the developing world is actually far more efficient. Mother being the necessity, or necessity being the mother of invention. That perspective can now also be applied to all of this untapped potential. So there's a tremendous amount to be done. It can be done quickly. It can be done with a low entry cost. And because people at multiple skill levels can enter, it can be a capacity building exercise. Secondly, manufacturing. You already have a German satellite company building a factory in India to turn out hundreds of standardized, commoditized satellites per year that can then have the right modifications and adjustments made back in Germany for the end customer. When you think about the developing world, particularly in Africa, there's an opportunity to create an industrial base. And there is a demand for manufacturing for the non-North American space ecosystem. And it would be very interesting to see public-private partnerships where the government was leaning in to provide benefits and possibly certain resources to attract the level of foreign direct investment needed to then build up these manufacturing centers in the African nations. So those are two things that come immediately to mind about how can people participate in the space economy. Looking forward, I strongly recommend that people look at how they can act locally while thinking interplanetarily. Because looking at parts of the economy like launch or advanced manufacturing and others can lead to endeavors with extremely high cost of entry and extremely high sunk costs, which can derail subsequent development. So in the short term, next 5 years, I would recommend working on insight and working on manufacturing and leveraging that to build the capacity to help fund the universities and the high schools so that there's additional workforce that can then help African nations move up the skill and sophistication curve for participating in the space economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. So I have this question, especially for those in the African region who are into space business. Do you think we have advertised ourselves very well to our various regions for them to know our activities and at least build the interest of the young generation to know that Africans can also do something?
Thank you. I think that is one of the things that we lack in the continent. So next year, maybe second quarter of next year, RASCOM, in collaboration with the Africa Space Agency and also the Space in Africa, will be organizing an African Communications Conference. This is to enable us to take a stock and also amplify what RASCOM is about to the member states. And also this year, for the first time, we're able to have, there was a Space in Africa conference in Angola, which RASCOM mounted a booth for itself. And in fact, a lot of people came to ask what RASCOM was about and was RASCOM really in existence. And that was an opportunity for us to sell RASCOM to those present at the meeting. And in fact, I was very glad to attract a lot of people, either from the president of the AU education sector, and also the president of the Africa Space Agency. As a follow-up, they even made a visit to RASCOM. In fact, this was very, I was very happy with this because it enabled us to sell RASCOM to the general public, and also we keep doing that by the engagements that we do, such as this forum, letting people know what RASCOM is about and the kind of services that RASCOM will be able to offer within the continent. And these are ways to be able to sell ourselves and also to make people aware of what the institution or the organization RASCOM has.
Thank you very much. Temedayo, do you have anything to add? Okay. Ali, I think I saw your hand. Perhaps. Yeah.
No, thank you, sir. One thing that does come to mind is that this awareness will be fundamentally important in ensuring foreign direct investment. I would recommend that the African nations pool resources to help highlight and make aware the opportunity to the world to invest in Africa right now, specifically in the space economy, and highlight critical opportunities like the work going on in Rwanda, like the work going on in Kenya, like the work going on here in Ghana, and around the continent, where there are specific activities and opportunities that can be highlighted. Amazing work in analog missions, in critical resources, in the opportunity to create an equatorial spaceport. The world needs to know that Africa is open for space business. And in my opinion, they don't quite understand that yet. It's too mixed up in other things. So I would as a professor and as a businessman, I would recommend a directed campaign to space economies around the world to help share the opportunity and excitement about Africa.
Thank you very much. This last question goes to Motalani. As Africa seek to go beyond just launching satellites, but rather send people into space, what do you think are some of the policies and laws that we need to put in place to govern and guard or even raise the interest of students or prospective astronauts, that they may not perhaps be hurt in any way as they join this quest?
Sorry, can you repeat the latter part of the question? I didn't get that.
Okay, so I'm saying that right now, this forum is not just trying to talk about space business or just launching satellite into space, but also looking at the situation whereby we can also send people into space. Now, I want to look at the laws or policies that can be put in place to more or less serve as a guide or governance for prospective astronauts.
Oh, okay, thank you for that question. Before I answer that question, let me just quickly hint on the last question. In my opinion, I would think that one of the things we can actually do to, to sell ourselves to the global spacescape and to allow them to understand, that we're actually ready for space business, is to also look within Africa first and ensure that we collaborate, Pan-African, at the Pan-African level, have a sufficient form of collaboration in a way that we understand what each country, is good at. Because I know that, for instance, we used to have like an African space conference, which was held here in Nigeria in 2019. That could be a way, for us to share ideas on what, we're peculiar, our peculiarities, within the African continent. Then by the time we're able to pull, our resources together, be it human resources and the knowledge that we have already acquired, then at that point it's a bit easier for us to come, as a group, in Africa, to be able to sell ourselves to the world. And more importantly, I know that there are different forums, globally, where space business are usually being discussed. We also need to ensure that we are actively involved, because I know that even at the level of COPUS, which basically is where the regulations, space regulations and policies are sometimes determined. I know that the African bloc is always, not sufficient. So when we are unable to project ourselves on all these platforms, it becomes difficult for us to showcase, what we have to offer. Then when we pull ourselves together, then one, we're able to pull resources, share the financial body and whatever liabilities, come from it. So in a way, it shifts the burden from, the heavy burden from us, and we're able to work together. So to answer the questions that you said, and of course, currently, internationally, we have about 5 space legislations, which, currently regulates outer space activities. And in Africa, I would say that not many countries have signed so many of the legislations. Not so many countries have actually signed so many of the legislations. Particularly when it comes to human space flight, most countries usually have national legislations which takes charge of, the human space flight, particularly when it comes to peculiarities. So for instance, let's assume Nigeria is wants to launch an astronaut into space. we are supposed to have like a legislation here in Nigeria that would take charge of, that human space flight, which would ensure that insurance is taken care of, and some other mitigators which will protect the astronauts is taken care of adequately. On the other hand, we also have at the international level, we have the return of astronauts legislation, which protects the astronauts adequately and ensures that even in any situation where there is a form of mishap, at that point the astronaut is no longer just a responsibility of the country, the launching state. Now the astronaut is now a responsibility of the whole world. So should there be any form of mishap or any form of mishap, or if the astronaut is found in any part of the world, the return of astronauts agreement takes care of this adequately from a legal standpoint. So they really do not have to be afraid to do it. They have nothing to be worried about. And also, we also have the liability regime, which also takes charge of, some part of the human space flight regarding the issue of liability, and who takes charge of whatever liability comes from,
Thank you
the
very much.
human space flight.
We want to take some few questions from the audience.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We want to take some few questions from the audience. Okay, so Patrick, you can speak.
Okay, thank you. Director from RASCOM. Yeah, I would like to know RASCOM's CSR towards space education. That is, if they have any social corporate responsibilities towards space education in Ghana. And also recently, when there was a break of the fiber optics cable and the Mediterranean Sea, there was a lot of issues. But all we heard the NCA saying is we can now maybe use what you call Starlink and then other satellites. I want to know if RASCOM has any plans to in the future produce satellites. Maybe that will be put in the gestational orbits, or a satellite in constellation that will give African internet. Apart from that, Tima, the name is difficult to pronounce. My brother from Space Africa. Yeah, I think when it comes to space education, you are doing really well. So you mentioned about what do you call it, the money that space offers in Africa and then other things. But though there's no time, but I wanted to hear if in one way or the other, Africa also has a capacity that is also putting those satellites out there or those facilities out there. So in that case, how much of that money remain in Africa here? Or we only just depend on, you only being dependent in that order. Also from Nigeria communication satellites, I think NECOMSAT-2 has been in the system for a while. I would like to know the basic services they provide. And are those basic services limited to Nigeria alone, or what are some of the windows? Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me quickly answer that of RASCOM. You made mention of CSR that I would like to say that currently we don't, but just a month ago, RASCOM signed an MOU with Intersputnik. Intersputnik is also another regional organization that has that abilities, and as part of the MOU, RASCOM can also leverage on these STEM projects that they have to educate our people on the continent. So yes, we should watch out for the collaborations. And also we have other partner agencies also coming up, like the EU also. We had some online meeting, and they also have such projects. So I think with RASCOM, the best is to also leverage on these resources for the betterment of our people. Yes, and the second question is about when we had an issue of the undersea fiber cut. So if you could recollect when the minister was addressing the parliament, the minister made mention of how do we help RASCOM, okay, in order to equip the continent, in order that when such an occurrence happens, we will not be in the kind of problem we have that we find ourselves. So as RASCOM, we're also preparing ourselves. We prepared a lot of documents also on that, and we also looking at collaboration with the African, that is our member states closely. We want to take advantage of this and to see what we are going to do in order to be able to absorb that shock when it happens again. Now, it's not only Starlink, but if every Africa country has links to SATCOM, that will be able to address the economic difficulties in times of economic challenges, in times of those difficulties, to be able to help. As you can see, when that happens in Ghana, the central bank was not working, even the banks were not able to work, individuals also were not able to work. So imagine we have such links via satellite to help us to cater for emergency services, especially that of the central bank. Like our financial and banking sector will be able to run in as much as the problems that we have. So yes, we've developed some documents on that. We want to push it to the AU itself and look at how best we'll be able to get some support to that effect. So you can also watch out for that space, and RASCOM would like to be part of that solutions going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions from the audience?
Hello, it's just for contribution regarding the topics, because it is very wide. And in my opinion, we are going far from the subject. Here, it is space business in Africa. For a very long time, this business is here. The main prize was INTL. You heard about INTL, Eutelsat, Turaya, Global Star, Imarsat. All of you may know about those companies that were making business in Africa. So how? By focusing the African needs. Because with the satellite, this is the only means that we can broadcast the same information at the same time and everywhere. In the village and everywhere at the same time. So we can make business with satellite, of course. But by doing what? Those was here for how many years? RASCOM arrived and some company are here. NICOMSAT, Nigeria, Angola. And recently, I don't know, maybe Ghana. They have satellite also. All of them are land dancing satellite. But let us know how to get money. This money, African money. This is the topic. How to get it is to cover the uncovered areas. The last miles, the backup solution, for example. Symbolic cable, optical fiber can be backed up by satellite, because satellite, it's not easy to cut the satellite. Broadcast also, everywhere. So it's how to get money. But that focus on this area. And where RASCOM arrived also is this to take the place in the games. RASCOM with Intelsat also. So let us onboard RASCOM. RASCOM is doing the same that Intelsat was doing, Intelsat and Imarsat. Same. Why? African give the market to the other companies and don't give the market to RASCOM. You have to give the market to RASCOM. Only RASCOM can do everything, can do backup. If you have to cut the internet cut, RASCOM can do it. Direct to home. The big event, African event, president match, football match in Cote d'Ivoire. Give the market to Rascom. They are covering the whole entire Africa. It is the only satellite I can say that cover the whole African country. So why this money is going out? This is to focus on that, to try to get this money and to help Rascom to have our market. Also, landing rights. They are covering the African market. Transmitting and receiving. What they pay? Nothing. So it is a matter of regulation. We have to regulate our country, our market, our fund to get money from that. This is the main topic. This is what we have this. Merci beaucoup.
All right. Question for Mr. Oshong. Every satellite has an end of life. What are you doing for Rascom satellites? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Rascom current satellite would be orbit first quarter of 2030. Now, before that happens, Rascom is collaborating with the satellite from the African countries. How we'll be able to market ourselves. But currently, like Mr. Sa said, there is no money for us to launch another satellite. But how do we ensure that the market stays within Africa? And that's why it's Rascom's responsibility to ensure that we market that of the African satellite operators. Like Nightcomsat is there, like Egypt, they have satellites, Angola, they have satellites. They are members of the AU. So we take the opportunity to market those satellites until maybe Rascom in itself has money for satellites to rebuild another satellite. In addition to that, now, like I earlier said, if you launch satellite, it's not only you launching one satellite, but you need to have backups and also for other services. Now, this is where Rascom uses the other service providers within Africa in order for us to have a link between ourselves and be able to back up among ourselves and have a very formidable constellation to better serve Africa, both in the broadcast section and also in the space satellite section as well.
Any contribution from our other panelists? Okay, right. Okay, thank you all very much. I think.
Can I think there was a question addressed to me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. There was a question about you know, the money in the market, how much of that comes to Africa and things like that. So I want to say that number one, the space business is global. So I think there was also the other panelist that was talking about, you know, some ideas around businesses to set up in Africa that can address different things. Well, the point is that space business is global. So whether you're setting up a geospatial company in Africa, or you want to be able to manufacture satellites in Africa, or whatever type of space business you want to do, your competition is global. So you're not just going to be competing with, you know, African institutions, you're competing with global institutions. So it's very, very critical. Now, most of the revenue that is made in the African space and satellites industry actually go to foreign entities. For example, if we use the FSS and MSS market as an example, where Rascom operates, yes, we've got a couple of African operators, Nightcomsat, GGPN, NowSat, Alcomsat, but you know, all of these companies probably make less than 10% of the entire revenue in the fixed satellite services and mobile satellite services market, which generates, you know, pretty more than $1 billion.
Sometimes you can make it brief.
I just want to.
Yeah. Sorry, what?
I think Botalan had her hand up, but I just want to say something as we wrapping up, because I put this panel together with people who I know who definitely have been in leadership in terms of the commercial and the business and law and policy space. And the point is to tie this back to what are some of the needs of the workforce going forward. First of all, Temidayo has really transformed, helped to be, he's one of the transformative leaders in this space. Because I'm sure when he started Space in Africa, everybody thought he was crazy. This young guy with this crazy idea, what's space in Africa? Is there space in Africa? Now his event is a destination event. Anybody who wants to talk about doing business in Africa, in the space ecosystem, has to show up at the Space in Africa context. I think last year he had it in Cote d'Ivoire, this year was in Angola, and I heard it was a sold out event, right? So the fact of the matter is that there, again, somebody took a chance as a business person on stepping out on faith and saying, I see the future, I see that space is the future, and therefore let me get the people who are interested in doing business in Africa to come. So that's a starting point. So it behooves those of us who are in the academic institutions to figure out, okay, he's bringing in the business sector, and yes, there's some room in his conference for a little bit of an academic piece, but not the kind of a work that I think I am asking the academics and the NGOs to do, which is to be the, let's say, the crucible and the cradle of developing capacity to take those companies. So let's say company X even comes to Ghana and say, hey, we want to sell you our satellite. You have to be able to have a conversation that says, okay, fantastic, but where's the additive for our ability to, in the future, make sure that the satellite is going to be working? If the life cycle is 15 years, but 15 years from now, who is going to be able to be a part of the crew that will be managing it, monitoring it, repairing it, etc., designing the next version of the satellite, so that this version we're buying it from you, but version number 2, we want to be part owners of the deal. So it has to be a mindset shift. Otherwise, we're not going to create space at all. The space economy is going to just become a new colonial environment unless Africa says, okay, this is what we have right now, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same way in the future. So I think those of us who are able to in the future, I don't know where he's going to have his conference next year, but certainly we should be having a conversation. This is where we might want to put a session now on CSR on the table. And I asked here to be on this call because I took a certificate in space business from him. And by the way, let me do a ad. He runs a certificate in space business out of ASU Thunderbird School of Management. It's a 1-week course. It's a really great course. You get to meet quite a few different kinds of people. It's a small course, but you get to learn a lot because the breadth and depth of what it is they cover really gives you a sort of a foundation in how to look at space from a business perspective. Most of us are engineers. We're seeing it just from a technical perspective. And I learned a lot just from being in the course. And I try to sneak in, having taken it once, I try to sneak in for some extra sessions every time he has it in Washington, D.C. So I'm inviting you, he's given me authority to invite you to come as part of the Futures Forum crew and be basically get the Futures Forum discount, right? Because I got a discount to go, I'm a nonprofit. So I'm just saying that to say, you know, these are the people who are interested in developing capacity from the development country perspective. So again, Zahir has been saying to me, but you have to make that conversation with the companies when they come to sell. You can't make it as an afterthought 5 years later. It's too late. The deal's already been done. So the deal has to be done at the table. So therefore, it means that as we talk about the capacity of, let's say, the political elite who are making some of these decisions, the technical elite who sometimes are not at the table, when decisions are made, there has to be a come to Jesus moment between the technical people in the GSSTIs and the ministries of communications or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the various political people who are having these conversations without really bringing along the people in the technical elite who really understand what the business is. And so I don't know how we're going to do it. I think sometimes it's difficult because, again, the leadership style of the country. But we have to find a way of engineers to engineer our way around those blocks to get them to understand it can't be business as usual. It cannot be. And I know it can be done because the thing about engineers, we can't find a way to put a bridge over the mountain. We're going to find a way to do a tunnel or some other way of doing it. So let us really be strategic, have some foresight, and be strategic about how do we in the engineering community, the STEM community, find a way to work through the political challenges of our countries to get them to be shepherded in the direction that they need to go in. That's the only way it's going to happen. So I'm not sure if Motadan has anything to add as a policy person in the Nigeria Space Agency. But I mean, again, it's all well and good to talk about policy, but even the Nigeria Space Agency has had people in the political leadership do things that they didn't know. So the fact is, the technical people are always the last to know. And that is part of the challenge, again, of the leadership style in our developing countries, that things are done without the technical people being at the table. And that also has been something we work very hard on changing. I think we have come to the end of this session. I do want to thank all of you for participating. Thanks, Motalani. I hope that maybe next year, this time we're in Nigeria. Thanks, Tivadayo. And I say that only because the Africa Association for Engineering Education is headquartered out of Nigeria. Thanks, Zahir Ali, for being a part of this session. Thanks, Timothy Ashong, for coming and joining us. We really appreciate having you here. And Kwabena, our newfound friend, potentially the host of the Oasis project